Welcome to Lesson 3-7. Today we're going to be talking about functions and graphs. Okay, so what is a function? A function is a relationship between numbers and variables. So it's some sort of action or function that kind of relates things. So when one thing does one thing, the other thing does the other, and it's proportionally happening. Okay, a linear equation. It's when an equation, when you graph it, it forms a line. So if you look in the word linear, you see the word line. So basically you're forming a line with a certain equation. So, for example, once you get an equation and you graph your x and y coordinates that you get, you are going to be forming something like this. Sometimes it's going this way, sometimes it's going this way, sometimes it's a little more this way, sometimes it's more steep. So it just depends on what kind of relationship we're talking about with the function equation. Now, when you have your function equation, you have an x, and then you do all the stuff to the x, and then you'll get a y. So basically, we are going to be graphing. So we need to recall what we know about graphing. So this is our x-axis, and this is our y-axis. So we're going to be getting a bunch of points on a table, and you're going to have to be able to graph it. So remember the steps for graphing. The first thing, you start at the origin always. So you never start over here, you never start over here, up there, or anywhere. You start right in the middle, because this is like where it starts. So if you think of the origin, the beginning, so this is where the graph starts, and then we have to move accordingly. So it's like, if everybody needs to do it the same way, so we always have the same points. So we start at the origin. Then we move horizontally. So we start here, and we either move to the right, which is positive, or we move to the left, which is negative. And that is our x-coordinate. So the first coordinate tells you, okay, I start at 0, and then I move left or right, depending on what this number is. So if it was a negative number, we'd move that many units this way. If it was a positive number, we'd move that many units this way. Then after we move horizontally, we need to move vertically. So now that I've moved over this many units, I need to see, am I going up or am I going down? And remember, going up is positive and going down is negative. So kind of think, going right is positive, going up is positive. Going down is negative, going to the left is negative. So that vertical number is our y. So this tells us how many this way to move. This one tells us how many up and down to move. Okay? So that's kind of a little mini review of graphing. So basically, you're going to be graphing a line, a linear equation, based off of something that looks like this. So they're going to give you an equation, and then they're going to tell you, okay, once you do so many things to the x value, you're going to go ahead and you're going to get your y value. Then this is one coordinate, 2, 5. So that means you move over to the right 2 units and up 5 units. So basically, this where you'll get your points from a table that looks like this, which is from an equation. Okay, let's go ahead and do a few examples. All right, let's look at a few examples. Number 1, these first 3, we're going to go ahead and graph each equation. So you're thinking, it's strange how something that looks like this is going to come out to a graph, but it is. So what we're going to have to do before we even graph is make a table. So first step, make a table. So we have x values and we have our y values. You see our variables in here? That means that we're going to plug in a number for x. And then every time you plug in a number for x, you're going to do proportionally the same thing. So if I plug in a 1, I'm going to subtract 3 and get y. If I put a 2 in, I'm going to subtract 3 and get y. If I put 3 in, then I'm going to have to subtract 3 and get y. So every time you're doing that same kind of thing to your x. So every time you move up, you're going to do something else. Then that's why we're going to get a line, because we have a pattern going on. So we're going to go ahead, you can choose any numbers you want. So I'm going to choose 0 for x. So if I put a 0 in for x, that means I'm going to have y equals 0 minus 3. So that means y is equal to negative 3. So that means our y value is negative 3. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and choose 1. So I'm just kind of going to choose like 3 or 4 different points to go up. So now a positive 1. If I plug in a positive 1 for x, and I subtract 3, I'm going to get y is equal to negative 2. If I plug in a 2 for x, and that means y is going to be 2 minus 3, which gives you y is negative 1. So every time I'm just choosing a number for x, and I'm plugging it in for x. So if I say x is equal to 0, what's y going to be? So if I put 0 in for this, I'm going to subtract 3, and y is going to be negative 3. If I want 1 to be x, I'm going to go ahead and plug 1 in for x. 1 minus 3 is going to give us negative 2. So that's why we're moving in a pattern. So now I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to kind of erase some of my work so that I can graph on here because I'm running out of space. You, however, will not be erasing work. I want to see all of your work. Because if I don't see your work, I can't see what you've done. So, show me your work. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and graph now. So, remember, this is my x-axis, this is my y-axis. I'm going to go ahead and make a few points. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Okay. So my first point is 0, negative 3. So that means I'm going to start at the origin, and I'm going to go 0 units left or right. Now I'm going to go negative 3 units down. So negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. So here's my first point. My next point is 1, negative 2. So I'm going to start at the origin. I'm going to move 1 positive point to the right, and I'm going to move down 2. My next one is 2, negative 1. So I'm going to start at the origin, move 2 units to the right, move 1 unit down. So if you see, every time I enter in another number, it's going to be on this area. So I'm going to go ahead and draw a line through those points. So there's the line that's based off of this graph. Alright, now I'm going to go ahead and make a graph for this equation. So I'm going to go ahead and make a table, first of all. So I'm going to have x, and I'm going to have y. So when I plug in any number for x, I'm going to get something for y. Now notice I chose numbers that are close together so that we can have some sort of direction of where our graph is moving. So don't go choose like 2, 50, negative 10. Like you will have something, but it's going to be such a broad range that you're going to make a huge graph. So choose something that's closer together because basically we just want to see a general idea of what's going on. Okay, well you're going to see that I'm going to choose the same numbers again. So we'll go ahead, well actually I'm going to start with a negative 2. So I'm going to put a negative 2 in. So if I go ahead and I put a negative 2 in for x, I'm going to have negative 2 times negative 3, which is going to give me a positive 6. So my y is going to be 6. If I put in a negative 1 for x, I'm going to have negative 3 times negative 1, and I'm going to get a positive 3. So positive 3 for y. My last one, I'm going to go ahead and plug in 0. So negative 3 times 0 is going to give me 0. So that means we have a point at the origin. So let's go ahead and graph this. We have our x and our y. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to need a little bit more space on my x-axis. So I'm going to go ahead and graph this point. So alright, so if I have a negative 2 on my x value, I'm going to move 2 units to the left, and then a positive 6, so I'm going to move up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to be over here somewhere. Okay, so this is my first point. My second point is negative 1, 3. So I'm going to start at the origin, move 1 unit to the left, and then go up 3. My last point that I chose is 0, 0, which is right here at the origin. So we're going to go ahead and make our graph. Now obviously mine isn't perfect, because I'm not on graph paper. So you will be using graph paper for this lesson. Alright, third one, we have y equals negative 3x plus 2. So we're going to make an equation again. So x, y. So I'm going to go ahead and plug in a negative 3. So if I plug in a negative 3, it's going to be negative 3 times negative 3 plus 2. So 3 times 3 gives us 9, and it's going to be a positive 9 because we have 2 negatives. 9 plus 2 is going to give us 11. So we're going to have 11 for our y-axis. Then negative 2. So if I do negative 3 times negative 2 plus 2, my answer is going to be, let's see, negative 3 times negative 2 is going to give me a positive 6. Then plus 2 is going to give me a positive 8. Notice what I'm doing. I see that I'm multiplying by a negative number, so I'm choosing negative numbers for my x. So I don't have to worry about adding negative numbers. So if I multiply 2 negatives together, I'm going to get a positive. So it might be a good strategy for you to use as well. So if you don't want to be using negatives, and you're multiplying by a negative number, plug in a negative number to multiply it by, so you'll get positives. So that's what I'm doing. So negative 1. So now I'm going to go ahead and plug in negative 1 for x. So negative 3 times negative 1 plus 2. That's going to be a positive 3 plus 2, which is going to give me 5. Okay, so looking at my graph, I'm going to need some high positive numbers on my y-axis, so I'm going to make my graph accordingly. So I'm also going to need some negatives. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. Use your judgment here. So I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to need at least 11 on my y-axis because I have 11 here. I need at least a negative 3 on my x-axis. Okay, so here's my x, here's my y. So my first point is negative 3, 11. So I'm going to start at the origin, move 3 units to the left, so 1, 2, 3. Then I'm going to move 11 units up, which I'm pretty sure is the top of my graph. So it's about right there. Obviously mine's not going to be perfect because I do not have graph paper, so use graph paper. So negative 2 is going to be 2 units to the left and then 8 units up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to be about here. And then I have negative 1, 5. So negative 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm going to be about here. So my graph's going to go about like this. All right. There's several steps to this, but you're going to get the hang of it pretty quickly, I think. Okay, let's go ahead and look at a word problem. So somehow we're going to come out with a graph that looks like from this thing. So let's see. It says Sandy makes $6 an hour babysitting. The equation M equals 6H describes how much money M she earns babysitting for H hours. Represent the function as a graph. So just how we made a table and a graph over here, we're going to do the same thing over here, except we got to pick out all the stuff from all of these words. So first of all, don't panic when you get to a word problem. Look for an equation and look for some kind of clues that they give you. So here's the equation they gave us. So they already gave us the equation. We don't have to come up with it, which is good. One less step for us. Then they went ahead and started off by saying $6 an hour. So that means each hour that we're going to go up by 6 hours. Is why we're multiplying. So we're going to go ahead and make a graph. Now instead of being X and Y, we're going to have H and M. Now, our points are going to look like H, M instead of X, Y. But it's still the same graphing process. So, here's our equation. If we work 1 hour, how much money are we going to make? If we work 2 hours, how much money are we making? If we work 3 hours, how much money are we going to make? So I'm going to find out how much I'm going to make for 1, 2, and 3 hours. So I'm going to use my equation. So M is equal to 6 times H. So if I do 6 times 1, I'm going to make $6 if I work 1 hour. If I do 6 times 2, I'm going to make $12 if I work 2 hours. And then if I do 6 times 3, I'm going to make $18 working 3 hours. So we're going to go ahead and make a chart, or graph. So I'm going to need a lot of Y values. Okay, so that means that this is going to be hours, and this is going to be how much money we're making. So running out of room here. I'm going to make some more room, people. Do not mind this ugly graph. 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So I know I'm going to be making up to $18, so that's why I extended my graph up to $18. So if I work 1 hour, I'm going to get $6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 hour, I'm going to make $6. If I work 2 hours, I'm going to make $12. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So $12 for about 2 hours. Okay, if I work 3 hours, I'm going to make $18. So if I go over 3 hours and I go all the way up to 18, so it's about right here, that means my graph's going to look something like this. Alright, so make sure that you watch this lesson another time if you're a little bit confused. Go back in your book and look at your examples. Do not let this watching it one time get you down. Watch it again if you need to. You'll be able to get it eventually. So go ahead and rewatch it if you need to. Look in your book. or come with your questions tomorrow. Let's go ahead and do some on your own questions.